Cringe is back on the menu, boys. Let's not drag this out. All these fools survive a volcanic eruption. They got hit face first with pyroclastic cringe and just walked it off. I'm not kidding. The worst that happened was that Discount Aragorn got shanked. The rest of them walked away with a few scratches or were perfectly fine. Just look at the screen, because you need to see it to believe it. This is what they were left in. All that fire just eating up every house and every main character survives this. Strong woman wakes up covered in Adar's booty dust. Took the blast to the face, full-on volcano bukkake, not a mark. Never mind that she's wearing metal armor, so basically an oven. She should be a pot roast, but no, this heifer is raw. Let me show you what would really happen. This is a picture of victims from Pompeii from 2,000 years ago when Mount Vesuvius erupted. They were hit with the same kind of pyroclastic flow. It killed them on the spot. Anyone who was outside died from their blood boiling them to death. Those hiding inside buildings could have suffered the same fate, but on the off chance that they didn't, the hot gases would liquefy their lungs. If that didn't kill them, then whatever air they breathed was probably saturated with volcanic ash, which when inhaled would have created a kind of volcanic cement. There are dozens of these bodies preserved in the ash and pumice, to varying degrees of detail. In some cases, we can see exactly what they were wearing and even make out facial expressions. Basically, whatever they were doing when the blast hit, that's how their bodies were preserved. It's horrifying, and as far as I can tell, a guaranteed death sentence. There's no chance that you can take the blast to the face and just wake up crusty. Doing this in the show proves the show has no stakes. There's no risk to any of the main characters, no chance that anything bad will happen to them. The showrunners have lost any credibility they could have had as storytellers, as filmmakers, and as stewards of Tolkien's works. And you gotta remember, someone at Amazon read this script before it was ever shot and went, "Looks good to me." Yeah, it looks good that fire literally rained down on your cast and not a damn one of them got hurt. Sure, why not? So Strong Woman wanders around and bumps into Theo, who's looking for his mommy. Strong Woman takes him with her and walks as the camera pans to the right where Isildur is trying to rescue his friends who are trapped under a building. I'm only mentioning the camera move because Strong Woman looked in that direction and she's supposed to have keen elf eyes, but somehow totally didn't see Isildur from 100 feet away. As Isildur struggles to lift the framing, Queen Bee shows up with the other survivors. Isildur calls her over to help, and they manage to get the rock free, but the white friend is dead, obviously. Queen Bee has them follow her, and they hear some people calling for help from a burning building. Somehow, this family has managed to survive despite being surrounded by kindling. They go in to help the family with Isildur holding up the framing so Queen Bee can get the family out, but then the roof collapses. Queen Bee takes some of the embers to the face, and Isildur is buried under the flaming rubble, and they think he's dead. But he's not. They don't show this in the episode, but it doesn't matter. We already know that he kills Sauron. We saw that in The Lord of the Rings, the movie you're ripping off right now. We already know he survives, so why are you pretending he doesn't? Do you think this adds tension? It doesn't. If you wanted to copy the "Is Aragorn dead" scene, because that's what this is, why would you use the character the audience already knows doesn't die? Speaking of people who won't die, it cuts to the murderous munchkins finally finding their grove. Nori and her family catch up to the rest of the group, but when they get there, they find rocks from Mount Doom's eruption. Right. So how far away are they from Mount Doom? Rocks of this size don't get thrown that far, so they have to be within 10 or 15 miles of the eruption. If that's the case, how would Nori and her family miss the flaming hot rocks crashing to the ground? They spotted and heard Meteor Man, but they didn't hear the volcanic eruption, even though the sound waves can travel hundreds of miles? They didn't even feel it? They didn't see the flaming mountain or the giant plume of smoke coming out of it? They shouldn't just be able to see the smoking mountain, but the sky itself should be affected because of all the fine ash and pumice in the air. Depending on the wind direction, it should be covering them. Remember, in that Hollywood Reporter article, the showrunners Payne and McKay said that they didn't want the show to be like Narnia, but Braveheart, that wildly inaccurate history. Oh, yeah, that explains it. Never mind. The rocks charred some of the trees, so Meteor Man goes to take a look. Lenny Henry and the busybodies from 227 see this and decide that they should have Meteor Man try to fix the trees. That's interesting because the last time they saw him, they wanted to send him away because he wasn't one of their kind. They also never saw him try to fix anything, and everything he's tried to fix has mostly failed, so why the sudden change of heart? There's no explanation in the episode. They just know that he's tried to heal things, and now suddenly want him around, now that they have a use for him. So these selfish fools decide to have Meteor Man heal the tree. Nori knows that this never goes well, but never says anything. Instead, they all stand around as Meteor Man mutters, and it seems his magic is working. Then Nori's little sister walks up towards the tree, talking about, he's doing it, he's making it better. And no one, not even Nori, does anything to stop her. So when Meteor Man fails yet again and a branch falls, Nori springs to save her sister from getting hit. Both girls are fine, but now the murderous Munchkins are afraid of Meteor Man. Again. This is literally the same plot from every other time we've seen this dude. He tries to help, but it fails and goes wrong, and now everyone's scared of him. It's like the writers keep resetting the story every episode, or they just don't know how to move on. It's more ridiculous in this situation because everything would have been fine if people had stopped the girl from getting too close. They can see he wasn't trying to hurt her, but no, they're done with him. In 5 minutes, they went from hating his guts to wanting his help to hating his guts again. Quality writing. Speaking of quality writing, we get another reset, this time with Elrond and Durin. Like before, Elrond goes to ask for help and gets rejected and suspected. This time, it's the king who refuses to help Elrond, even though he's got one of the darkened leaves proving the theory, and even though Elrond gets on his knees and begs. Durin then gets pissy with his father, saying Elrond is like a brother to him, a brother he was willing to disown because he didn't visit often enough. But the king won't be moved. He says some nonsense about powers greater than him having decided the elves' fate, so if it's their time to die, so be it. I can only guess that this is a passing reference to the ban of the Valar, which was done in response to Feanor and the Noldor killing the Teleri elves. But that ban only applies to the Noldor who refuse to repent, not all elves in general. The Valar also can't decide the elves' fate. They're forbidden from trying to control the Eldar's lives in any way. The most they could do is control whatever direct interactions they have with the Eldar, such as keeping the Eldar souls in the halls of Mondos, where they go when they die. Mondos controls that space, so he and the other Valar could decide when or if the Eldar would be reincarnated. That's it. Durin goes back to Queen Doritos, who doesn't take it well because she thinks Durin should be in charge. Well, that's not really true. She wants someone to be in charge. Whoever would that plump, gold-bedecked, inexplicably black woman be? No one knows. Elrond comes in and realizes that the king refuses his request, so he and Durin have a tearful goodbye. But wait, elves don't say goodbye. They say Namarie, and that means more than farewell. It means go towards goodness. Oh, for fuck's sake. Was that the best you could do? Honestly, did it never occur to you to use let it be, since that's also what Namarie means? So then Elrond gives back the mithril Durin gave him, showing that he wouldn't even use a small amount without permission. Durin sets it down on the table next to the darkened leaf, and it heals the leaf just by being next to it. Okay, so how come Elrond never noticed this? He had the leaf, did he never put the leaf next to the mithril? Celebrimbor tested it. Is this what he did? If so, how come he didn't tell Elrond? And if all it takes is to be next to the mithril, how about suggesting the king just allow the elves to visit and stand near the mithril veins? Wouldn't that solve the problem of mining the ore? Also, does this mean Elrond and Celebrimbor are cured since they both touched the mithril? You're going through all this drama and all they have to do is stand next to it? It can't be that simple. There has to be more to it, otherwise your plot makes no sense. At any rate, Durin calls Elrond back to see what happened, and then we get the revenge of the Cringe. Strong Woman and Theo spot some orcs who also managed to survive a volcanic eruption. If you remember from the last episode, several orcs along with Adar were chained up. So somehow the pyroclastic flow freed the orcs from their chains, but didn't kill them or melt them, or maybe these are the other orcs Strong Woman was looking for, who were just wandering around in a forest made of flammable materials. Theo wants to kill them, but Strong Woman says no because they don't have the position or the reinforcements. Interesting. That didn't stop her from wanting to go into a frozen wasteland to hunt down Sauron. Why is it stopping her now? Theo, however, doesn't care, and he tries to take her knife, but she stops him and says, "It's over." Wait, what? Then Theo insists and she tells him he has to stop. Why? You who's had a hate boner for Sauron for at least half a millennium, who literally had to be stopped from killing the prisoner just a few hours ago, you think Theo should let this go? Did y'all get a new writer for the show or something? Did they read the previous scripts? Because this is a massive face turn and it makes zero sense. This woman has been willing to damn everyone she encountered to ruin just to get her way, but now she wants to pause? Why? Even Theo asks this, saying that it's not her fault, but it actually is, and then Strong Woman admits that it is. What in the hell is happening? Why the sudden flip? Are you trying to redeem her by pretending she was never an asshole? Because that's not how this works. Then it cuts to Elendil. I forgot to mention in the last review that there was this moment between Isildur and Elendil and this horse named Beric. Elendil can horse whisper, like Aragorn, so he was able to calm down Isildur's horse who had been cut during the fight. When the eruption happens, Elendil runs to help Queen Bee, so he doesn't see that Isildur's horse gets spooked and runs off. So when he sees the horse here, he assumes it's his son, but it's not. Then someone shouts that Queen Bee has arrived, so he races to her, and she and Black Gimli stare at him until fake Theoden realizes something's wrong, and he says, "Where is Aragorn?" Because that's basically the same scene. It's the same fucking scene. And yes, that thing that happens with Brago in Two Towers, totally gonna happen with Beric. You paid $250 million not to remake The Lord of the Rings, and ended up remaking The Lord of the Rings. Back to the cringe, Strong Woman decides to lecture Theo about not seeking revenge. I will repeat that. Strong Woman lectures Theo about not doing what she's been doing the entire show. What she was literally doing before Mount Doom split out on her face. Now she's tempered. Strong Woman then claims that there weren't any orcs when she was Theo's age, but that's not true. They would have been in Middle-earth, so she wouldn't have seen them, but they did exist. When Theo asks if she's killed a lot of orcs, and she says yes, he says that's good. And she tells him that that's wrong to say because it darkens the heart to call dark deeds good. You mean like promising to murder every orc but keeping Adar alive so he can suffer when they die? Because that's what you did, like 3 hours ago. Was that not evil? Did that not darken your heart? Or can it get no darker? How can you write this into the script when she's done the very thing she's now saying not to do? If this was supposed to be some face turn where she realizes she's the most evil being in Middle-earth, you need to earn it. She's faced no consequences for her actions. She hasn't taken any ownership of this. You can't just have her switch and think that's going to work. We need to see her realize the error of her ways, not just lecture a little boy, call him a soldier, and then give him her sword to make him feel better. Then we find out that Queen Bee is blind. Apparently it was from the embers to the face, but as you can see, her eyes look fine. No scars, no scratches, nothing. The few burns she has aren't even near her eyes, so why is she blind? Just put something around her eyes to justify why she can't see. This is the easiest thing to do. You could have had her close her eyes and just redden the skin around them, and we would have assumed her eyes got burned. Why didn't you do that? Anyway, Lenny Henry sends Meteor Man on his way to the big folk and give him the paper with the constellations on it, saying that maybe the men will know which stars he's looking for. And maybe if the writing were better, this plot point would have been emphasized so the audience would actually care. Before Meteor Man leaves, Nori gives him an apple. Later on, she admits to her mother that her mother was right. She shouldn't have helped Meteor Man. It's weird that this would be the moment she realizes this, considering that she's watched Meteor Man jack up fixing things half a dozen times before, but had no problem helping him. This whole storyline has gone nowhere. We never see her try to help Meteor Man figure out his powers. We never see her try to help him figure out where the stars are again. She never asks what he says when he does magic, or where he thinks he might be from now that he can kind of talk. Instead, she has him pull the card. Hell, we don't even know who Meteor Man is yet, and this is so unconnected to the rest of the show that if you cut it out, no one would even notice. What was the audience supposed to get out of any of this? And now we come to it, the full cringe of our age. Just give me a moment. The cringe is still too near to me. So Celeborn is dead. Probably. For those who don't know, Celeborn is Galadriel's husband, and the father of their daughter Celebrian, who marries Elrond and births Arwen. I think you can see the problem with implying that he's dead, but that's what Strong Woman does. Theo asks if she lost anyone to the orcs, and she mentions Finrod but not her other brothers Angrod or Egnor, and then says her husband Celeborn went off to the war and never came back. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tolkien would be rolling in his grave. But no, that's not the part. This is the part. Strong Woman says that they met in a glade of flowers. Celeborn saw her while she was dancing there. That is how Beren met Luthien. That would have Tolkien rolling in his grave, because it's not just a story. It actually happened. His wife Edith would sing and dance for him in a glade. He loved his wife so much that he included that moment in his story and gave it to the most beautiful woman in all of Arda. When Edith died, he had his son Christopher engrave Luthien on her tombstone, and when he died, his son had Beren engraved on his. To take that story and give it to any other characters, knowing how important it was to Tolkien, you can't get any more disrespectful. You're literally spitting on the man and his wife's graves by doing this. What were you thinking? What made you think this, bastardizing the story of Beren and Luthien, was a good idea? I turned off the show when I saw this, by the way. I was done. I waited until the next day to finish it. I just couldn't do it. I turned it off, watched Fright Night instead. The original is out on 4K if you want to get it, because I needed to palate cleanse. I can't imagine anyone who worked on the films doing something like this. I don't even think it'd get past someone saying it. It'd be slapped down that fast. What were you actually thinking? Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the right question is, are you thinking? Because they go back to Strong Woman lecturing Theo about letting go of his anger. Do I need to remind you that half a day ago this woman threatened to kill all of someone's children and make him watch as she did it so he'd suffer before she killed him? And then when he called her the evil monster that she is, she just decided to go ahead and try to kill him anyway. Now, less than 24 hours later, she's had a change of heart. Why? What about watching a volcano explode changed her mind that hundreds of years of reasoned arguments couldn't? She watched scores of men and elves die, and it always pushed her further into revenge. But this one instance of a village in the middle of nowhere getting wiped out, this changes her mind? Come on. Speaking of which, really? Look at the screen. Really? You're copying the hobbits hiding under the roots? You know Jackson got that from Ralph Bakshi, right? You ain't even copying from the right source. So the orcs were just walking around, Theo spots them and then draws his sword, and the orcs hear this, and I swear I heard off in the east Shadowversity going, bullshit. I know it's a cinema trope that swords make noise when they're drawn, but even given them that, how the fuck did he hear this? Then we gotta go through the whole long scene of him sniffing around and trying to find them and conveniently never looking down. The orc says he can only smell ash, and then the orcs leave. Strong Woman tells Theo to get some sleep and they'll leave at first light, and he's like, what light? See, he feels guilty for stealing the sword and setting all this in motion, which he should. It is his fault. You can't even say he didn't mean for it to happen, because he knew what the sword was when he stole it, and he knew the old man from the tavern was siding with Sauron, but he kept that to himself. We're supposed to feel sorry for him because he's a kid, but he's not a very nice kid, and it's all gonna work out for him anyway, because you know his mother and Arondir are perfectly fine. Then we get a follow-up with Elrond and Durin. They're down in the Mithril mine trying to find a vein. They pause to let the mountain settle, and Elrond offers Durin a drink, which starts a convo about their friendship. It gets to the point where Durin almost reveals his secret name, his true name. Dwarves use public names, for lack of a better word, but have true names they only share with their family. This is true to the lore. And Durin considers Elrond his brother, so he goes to share their name, but Elrond stops him, again showing his respect for Dwarven culture. Honestly, Elrond is the only character written with any semblance to his true persona. Unfortunately, he has next to nothing to do because he keeps getting plot blocked by the writers. Like Nori in the Murderous Munchkins, Elrond's story keeps getting reset, and that's what happens here. Durin finds the motherlode of Mithril just behind the wall and lets Elrond take a look, but when he turns around, there's the king, who boots him out, yet again. Now, at some point, Durin gave him back the Mithril, but we don't get to see that because it would make sense, so instead we get the shot of Elrond holding it. That's fine. The show only made a big deal about this being the sign of their friendship. Why show Durin giving it back? It's so important, you shouldn't even get to see it. Meanwhile, Durin gets chewed out by the king for going behind his back, bringing up how Durin was born ill, and it made his poor mother worry until one night his father saw a gray blah 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 blah. Short version, he thought the boy would make it and be a great king. Then Durin goes full Anakin and starts complaining about how his father is holding him back, and he says that Elrond is as much of a brother to him as if they were chiseled out the same stone pussy. And his father gets mad. He gets so mad that he disinherits Durin. Do you care? Didn't think so. Moving on, the Murderous Munchkins wake up and find out that Meteor Man actually did something right. He made the plants grow, so like normal people they try taking all of them. Then Nori's friend goes to collect some water and finds a massive footprint and runs away, leaving the basket, which floats downstream to these women. We still don't know anything about them. What are they? Are they witches, sorceresses, turfs? Who knows? Later that night, the turfs roll up on the tree Meteor Man touched and use a flower from the tree to figure out which way he went. Nori and her friend were watching, so it appears the friend never told anyone but Nori that there were big folks around. Not that I blame her. I mean, the Murderous Munchkins did put her at the back of the caravan like she was dead, so the big folks is coming, let 'em come. But no, Nori decides to tell the turfs Meteor Man went the other way, but they psych her out and appear behind her and snatch a flower from her hair. I'm sure that's important, but since we don't know anything about the turfs and they don't do anything with it, we don't know why, so it's kind of pointless to show it. Then Nori's father shows up with a torch and says he'll brain the turfs if they touch Nori, so the turf steals the fire and then blows the ashes from her hand, burning all the Murderous Munchkins' carts. Oh pobrecito. I don't care about these little fucking psychopaths. Not one bit. Now that we got the one joyous scene out the way, remember in Two Towers when Aragorn talked to the horse? Remember when Aragorn said he'd seen enough battle and let him go? Well, if you don't, now you can see it again, shittier and poorly written. See, Beric knows Isildur is still alive because the horse knows Isildur's mind. This is in the show, by the way. Last episode, this is what Elendil tells Isildur, that the horse knows his heart. The horse wants out, so Elendil lets him go, and he races towards a perfectly normal sky. Remember how Peter Jackson and his team meticulously checked all the references in the book for the stars and phases of the moon so the sky would match what Tolkien described? Well, the showrunners didn't, even though they're the ones making up the story, cause fuck continuity, I guess. How far away did they go from the eruption? He has to be running back to Isildur, but if he were, then wouldn't the sky be red from the mountain spooge? Now Elendil hates Strong Woman because he blames her for all this mess, which is technically fair. It is her fault. Then Strong Woman and Theo arrive at the camp. Theo makes his way to the med tent, and we get this drawn-out scene of him seeing wounded people, thinking his mother and her boy toy might be dead. They've got plus 10 plot armor, so they're perfectly fine. Not a scratch on them. Just like in Braveheart. Oh, wait, people died in that movie. Never mind. Strong Woman comes in and asks to see Queen Bee, and then discovers that the Queen is blind and cries about it. Why? See, here's the problem. Strong Woman already shows she didn't care about anyone but herself. According to the show, she's seen worse than this, and that's what inspired her to hunt Sauron for hundreds of years. Why would the deaths of one village and a handful of humans she admittedly doesn't care about suddenly make her care? We never get any explanation from her for why this event opened her eyes. Doesn't matter though, because now Queen Bee wants revenge. She tells Strong Woman to save her pity for the enemy. Pity's probably not the word you're looking for, because Queen Bee will be back to finish the job, and this upsets Elendil. Maybe he's crying over his lost son who's actually still alive, or over the total desecration of Tolkien's legacy. Who knows? Back with the murderous munchkins, they're all bummed out now that they know what it feels like to be decaravaned. But Nori's dad tries to cheer them up and get them going again with soaring, inspirational lines like, "We face it with our hearts even bigger than our feet." Anyway, oh no, I'm not dignifying that with a response. We're just gonna move on. Nora decides to leave to find Meteor Man, and so her friend and then her mom, then Lynn and Henry decide to join her. Meanwhile, Strong Woman, Bronwyn, and Arondir watch as Queen Bee sails away. Strong Woman asks where the survivors will go, and Bronwyn says there's an old Númenórean colony down south that they'll go to. Wait, what? Since when were there Númenórean colonies in Middle-earth? A couple of episodes ago, Farazan spoke like Númenor had been isolated since forever. There's been no sight of anything remotely Númenórean in Middle-earth, no mention of their presence, not even a suggestion that they even sailed near the coast. I understand you fucking up Tolkien's timeline, but how are you fucking up your own? It's like they wrote a first draft and just filmed it. After that, Bronwyn mentions that Viscount Aragorn has been injured. He's been skewered in the gut, and Strong Woman says he needs elvish medicine. Great, just go get the Númenórean medics. They know elvish medicine. Just go get them to come to the tent. But no, Strong Woman decides to take him to Lindon with her so she can face her fate. Then Viscount Aragorn, who looked too injured to stand a moment ago, casually walks out the tent, and people chant "Health to the King" out of sync. I don't understand how that happens. It's a film. If they can't get it together the first time, shoot it again or ADR it. Before they go, Theo tries to give back Strong Woman's sword, but she tells him to keep it because now he's a soldier. You do know this is the boy who set this whole thing off, right? Don't encourage him. Meanwhile, it turns out that Queen Doritos is power hungry. Guess now we know why she eats gold. Seriously, this entire scene is just her trying to push Durin to take the throne, and she's going full on Gollum. Calm down, mama. I believe he is going to be king, not you. Go on and get some diamond chitlins and settle the fuck down. Speaking of down, the king finally looks at the cured leaf and throws it into the mithril motherlode, where it floats all the way down to the bottom and wakes up a Balrog. Not all the mining, not them chiseling away at the mithril, a leaf. Well, that's just stupid. But not as stupid as this. Adar is still alive. Remember, he was chained to a beam surrounded by lots of wood, perfectly unscathed. The old man from the tavern gets the orcs to chant "Hail Adar, Lord of the Southlands," and Adar is like, "No, that's not its name anymore." And the old man goes, "Well, what do we call it?" And the showrunners do this. A title reveal. You're insulting your audience's intelligence more than usual. Most people watching the show have seen the films or read the books. They know what the place is. You don't need a title card to tell them it's Mordor. They've got eyes, they can see it, they know it's Mordor. Technically, it would be Corandor, because Mordor is black and this is red, but they still know what it is. The showrunners have shown their quality, and it's lacking. I don't get why they structured the show this way. They've created more problems for themselves than they ever needed to, and worse, the story has barely taken a full step. What has changed so far in these 7 episodes? We found out about the Mithril, about Adar, about a would-be king, and a mountain exploded. That's it. It took them 7 episodes to tell what could have been told in 2. They still haven't revealed Sauron, they still haven't set up Farazan, and they still haven't justified the title of the show, The Rings of Power. Payne and McKay had 3 years to develop the plot and story for the show, and this was the best they could do. A meandering mess filled with unlikable characters, bastardized lore, and random scenes cribbed from a better film. The show has zero stakes, unlike House of the Dragon, which has no hesitation in killing off main characters. I'm not expecting the Rings of Power to do the same thing, but there's not even a sense of tension in the show. There's never a moment of surprise or concern. When something like the Power Rangers is more suspenseful, you done fucked up. And I think the powers that be at Amazon realized this, which explains that Hollywood Reporter article shilling for the show. It was basically, this is why the show sucks, but the second season will be better. Sure it will. They're filming it now, so it may come out this time next year or maybe delayed until 2024. Unless they get someone to come in and help them with the plotting and writing, I don't see how the second season is going to be any better. That's not to say Amazon is panicking because the show does have an audience. I suspect many of them are like me, watching to see how bad it gets and then critiquing the fuckery. But there are some people who legit like it. The problem is that more people like House of the Dragon, and when you compare the two, you can see why. That comparison is not going away, and being seen as a lesser show does hurt Rings of Power. Amazon has invested too much money into this for the show to be second best. So, we will see how they wrap up this season. My guess is with the Sauron or Wizard reveal, or something to tie it back to the Lord of the Rings. They're going to need a decent enough cliffhanger to make people want to see more. Can these writers do it? I don't think so. They're going to try, but whatever they do isn't going to raise the stakes. Definitely not enough to undo this mess of a first season. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.